This is Siddharth Alwalia. Welcome to the 100x Entrepreneur Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prime Venture Partners, an early stage VC fund led by Amit Somani, Shripati Acharya, and Sanjay Swami. Prime is often the first institutional investor in category creating tech startups in fintech, SaaS, healthcare, and education, such as MoneyTap, Happy, MFine. To know more about Prime, visit primevp.in. Today we have with us Shripriya, founding partner at Spero Ventures. Shripriya invests in mission driven founders building a future that belongs to everyone. Prior to Spero Ventures, Shripriya led emerging tech investing at Omidyar Network. She has also been an active angel investor, a board member, and advisor to private technology companies throughout her career. She has held several leadership roles at eBay, including the Vice President of Product Marketing in US and Vice President of Global Product Management. She has an MBA from Harvard Business School, an MFA from Flint University in NYU Tisch School of Arts, and BA in Economics from Stella Maris College, Madras Universities. Welcome, Shripriya, to the 100x Entrepreneur Podcast.
Thank you so much, Siddhartha. I'm so excited to be here.
Shripriya, you have a very diverse journey. Would love to know, from growing up in Madras back in early 90s, how did you come to US and your journey thereafter, and what led you into venture investing?
Sure, when I was growing up in India, my dad was always actually very into computers. And so my brother and I learned to code when we're only a year apart. So when I was 11 and he was 10. And that was really my introduction to computers. And I was just completely fascinated. So when I was growing up in India, in the late 80s and early 90s, as you may know, NIIT was really becoming a big thing. So I actually learned to code both COBOL and C when I was there, and it all made sense to me. Even though I was doing an economics degree, computer science just made a lot of sense to me, and I'd always played computer games like King's Quest or Prince of Persia, and I'd always been kind of a geek that way. And so I'd always loved computers. And then I ended up finishing college, working briefly in India for a couple of years, and then coming to Boston for graduate business school at Harvard Business School. And it was a time when the open internet was still just very much in development, right? So in 1995, when we started, all of us were given AOL accounts, and things were still in the AOL world. And in 1996, in our second year, we ended up switching to school accounts for the first time, and I set up my presence on the internet. I bought shripriya.com, and I had this really simple, little geeky web page, which was like, "Hey, this is me. Here's what I do. Here's what I like." Very much a throwback to that time, and I just been passionate about the internet and what it can do ever since. When I finished HBS, I really wanted to move to Silicon Valley. Two of my section mates from business school ended up being real pioneers in the internet. Um, David Perry started, what is the name? Is it Chemcast? But it was a chemical business to business exchange, and it did really well. And another classmate of mine, Stieg Leshley, started a book trading platform that got acquired by Amazon. And so when we graduated in 1997, I really wanted to come out to the Bay Area, but I couldn't. Just for a whole set of reasons, I had to kind of work in a real job, quote unquote. And so I spent 15 of the most miserable months of my life doing consulting. And kind of one of the best moments was when I interviewed in the Bay Area in 1998, and then ended up moving January of 99. I moved to the Bay Area. I moved to San Francisco. I joined a company called NextCard, which was at the time doing something quite phenomenal. They were taking your credit card information online and approving you for a card in 30 seconds, and then issuing you the card number immediately. So you could start shopping basically within a minute after you were approved. So I joined Nextcard to focus on e-commerce efforts. Back in 1999, my job was to convince people to use our card online. And it was really kind of frontier tech at the time, even though now we take it all for granted. And, I was doing product management, I was doing product marketing, I was doing biz dev. And it was the first time really in 99 that I felt, oh my God, I love this job so much. I worked nonstop, not because I had to, but because I just loved everything about it. Writing product requirements documents, finding edge cases, working with engineers. Um, it really fit with the way I thought about the world, and it was just fantastic. And I did that for about 2.5 years. The company went public in May. I had joined in January or February, and it was quite a roller coaster ride because that company I ended up 2.5 years later committing securities fraud. The company ended up committing securities fraud, and so it was a really interesting ride. Fortunately for me, before that happened, very fortunately for me, before that happened, I had interviewed at a bunch of companies, and I landed at eBay. And eBay at the time in 2001 was already public, but when I went there, it had only 12 product managers. It truly is mind-boggling to think about. This was a company that was 3 years public and had 12 product managers. And I ran selling, the selling side. eBay, as you know, is a marketplace with buyers and sellers. So I ran all of the selling and the payments, and that was six product managers. And the buying had six product managers. And over my time there, by the time I left product management at eBay, it had over 70 product managers. So I joined in the 5 years I was there. I joined as probably the employee number 1800, and by the time I left, it was 15,000. And it was just an incredible time to be there. Yeah, so that's kind of like the highlights of my journey. And eBay was an amazing place. Um, Not only because of the high growth, but because of the passion of the people who were there. We woke up every morning and just so excited to be there, thinking about the community that we were enabling. Some of my best friends were made at eBay. I am still in touch with most of the people that I worked with. And it was an incredible community, like as product got larger and we'd be working, there'd still be like 20 people there at dinner. And we'd be like, okay, we're doing a dinner on what does everyone want? And, we'd eat there and, we just worked really long hours, but because we were just so passionate about what we were doing and what we were enabling, global economic opportunity. eBay was really the first company that did it, and it all seemed we take it for granted now, but it was quite an innovation.
Yeah, it was, I believe, built by the pioneers in eBay and the companies eBay acquired like PayPal.
Right. Yeah, and PayPal was an incredible company, right? I was very fortunate to um, be involved in the acquisition decision as well as in the integration. So I remember Meg Whitman, who was the CEO, who'd pull a group of people together, and eBay was a very product driven company, so product would be part of that group, and we'd debate, like, what should we acquire this company, should we try to build it ourselves? And eventually, as you know, we acquired the company, and it was one of the best decisions we made. So
Yeah, and did you end up working closely with Peter Thiel or Elon Musk at that point in time
no,
during the
not at all.
acquisition?
Yeah, so Peter, I think, left the day of the acquisition. He left PayPal. um, they're very particular people,
Yeah.
right? But I did work with the head of product who was there, Amy Clement. I got to know Reid Hoffman, who is an amazing human being. He ended up starting LinkedIn. So yeah, not Peter or David or Keith, but Reid and Amy and Dave McClure and a lot of others who were at PayPal when we acquired them. Premal Shah, who went on to start Kiva. So there were just a lot of really great human beings at PayPal.
And after your stint at eBay, what motivated you to choose filmmaking as a passion and career for a long period in time?
Yeah, so, you know, I grew up in India in the 80s. Um, and when I was growing up, I actually, the first school I went to was a Krishnamurti Foundation school in Chennai called The School. And, there are Rishi Valley is the other school. And I took a photography class when I was in fourth grade, and I absolutely loved it. And so I would always tell my parents, oh, I want to do photography. And, it was India, it was in the 80s and the 90s. And my parents would say, that is such a lovely hobby. You're right. It would be a lovely hobby. And so it was very clear to me growing up that, life was I had to choose a real quote unquote job. Not photography was not a job, it was a hobby. And so it was one of those things where I always dreamt of, working and then at some point doing photography full time because I would be able to and it would be my decision. I wouldn't have to ask anyone else for that for permission. And while I was in eBay, I took an evening class at Stanford in photography just to kind of say like, hey, do I really want to do this? And I realized that photography itself is just a very lonely um, career, right? Like it's a lonely job. It's you, it's your camera, you're out there, you're doing your thing. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something adjacent to that. And I realized in 2005, I was like, I want to go and do a 3 month film course. I want to figure out if this is for me. And eBay, John Donahoe was the CEO at the time. He's now CEO of Nike. He was really very open minded about letting me take 3 months off to go do that. And so I went to NYU. I went to their kind of continuing ed program, and I did a 3 month intensive in film, and I loved it. It seemed to have so many parallels to product. I really enjoyed it. And so I said, look, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? It felt like a moment in time. And, the way I think about life is long. It's a long and windy road. And I don't want to regret the opportunities I didn't take, and I'd have always regretted it if I hadn't tried film. And so I applied to NYU, and they take 36 students, the grad program. And I was very lucky and very fortunate to be accepted as one of the students. And then, right as I was accepted, um, I realized I was pregnant with twins. And the head of the program was just so kind that he deferred my admission by 2 years. So I started the program when my boys were 18 months old. And it was the three of the most intense years I've ever spent. Because as anyone who spent time on a set will know, is it's supposed to be a 10-hour day. You hope it's a 12-hour day. It ends up being a 16-hour day. And it's all of it is on set. You're standing, you're doing your work, it's high concentration. It might be a night shoot, in which case, you're flipping from a day schedule to a night schedule. And I was in my mid 30s and most of my classmates were in their 20s. And but I loved it, and I would edit at home, and I would try to spend time with my kids. But we'd have classes from like 8 to 10:30 at night. So it was a very consuming, all-consuming program, but I absolutely loved it. It has the creativity of product. It has the attention to detail when you edit. It was really lovely, and I wrote a feature script that was accepted into film markets and film labs. And it was then that I realized, it's going to take me 7 years to get this movie made, from end to end, from when I start writing to when when I'm done editing and it's done with the festival circuit. If that, it might even be 9. And I missed the pace of technology, right? Technology just moves at a completely different pace. 9 years is, a lifetime in technology, right? And right as I was thinking of going back into technology, I I was talking to one of my eBay colleagues, and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking of coming back to tech." And he said, "Wait, we're starting something." And I'm like, "Who's we and what are we starting?" And he's like Pierre Omidyar, and he were noodling on an idea of First Look Media. It was right around the time the Snowden revelations had come out, and Pierre really was, he considered buying the Washington Post, which eventually Jeff Bezos ended up buying. And Pierre dedicated that same amount of money to starting First Look Media because he believed that a very strong and fearless media is fundamental to a democracy. And so, so I joined the two of them and helped brainstorm what would product look like, what could we do, and the journalists came on, and I was there for a year and a half, working on product and design and working with the engineers and helping get that whole thing set up. And yeah, that was my journey back to tech.
And what led you, in 2018 to start your own venture?
Yeah, in 2015, when I was figuring out what came next after First Look Media, I had talked to a lot of venture capitalists about their portfolios and was there an appropriate role. So, the options ranged from COO to head of product at very large public companies. And as I was talking to my VC friends, a couple of them actually said, "Hey, would you consider VC?" And it wasn't something I had considered. To me, VC was always something that would come later, an undefined later. Like, I'll do that later, maybe later. And I was like, let me learn more. And so as I was talking to them, this role at Omidyar Network came by. I did actually come by earlier, and I said, "Oh, I'm not doing VC." So I was like, when I started talking to these people, I said, well, if I'm going to talk to VC firms, I should certainly apply to a Meteor network, right? And so I found that post. I reached out to the recruiter and I said, hey, I have no idea if you're still looking for this job. I saw it like a couple of months ago, but if you are, would love to be considered. And I heard back, and we went through a process. And in August of 2015, I ended up at Omidyar Network, and it was just an incredible team. It was an incredible focus. And I worked on emerging tech. I led emerging tech for the US, where I had no team and I had to hire and build the team out, and India, where there was a team, but we needed more people. And at that time, Omidyar Network in India had already hired Rupa, who's an amazing leader. And so at the time, we were structured by area of investment versus geography, right? And now we're structured by geography. So Rupa runs all of India, and venture is just a very local game, and that's the right way for us to be structured. It's a local industry more than a game. But yeah, I'm very glad that we're structured that way right now. And the emerging tech team, which is now just the venture investing team at Omidyar Network in India, is such a great team. All of them. I don't know all of them, but I know Siddharth and Badri and Madhav and um, Abhishek, and they're all like really great venture investors.
And in 2018, you spun out Spero Ventures from Omidyar.
Yeah. So, one of the things as Omidyar Network kept growing, right, um, we realized that a few things. One, um, all of the groups thought about the world slightly differently, right? Because, whether if you were doing financial inclusion, it was different from education, and education in India or financial inclusion in India was different from the US. And so, as we got larger, it became very clear that we were different, and how do we be the best in investors in whatever region we were in, right? And so um, when we looked at it that way, we realized that the way to do that was to be smaller and nimbler organizations, very focused. And India is a very competitive venture market, right? And so we said, hey, in order to win deals there, we need to be focused as a whole unit in India where we are working together across areas of investment and making great investments, right? So, the emerging tech team at the time was Siddharth, Padri, Madhav, and Aditya. And then there was the education team, and then there was the financial inclusion team. And so we just said, everyone, you can each have a focus, but we're going to work together, learn from each other. And we put them all under Rupa, right? Who is just, as you know, a phenomenal leader. And then for us, and we did the same with financial inclusion in the US, they became Flourish. But we were the only group, the US focused emerging tech group, who was very focused on venture investments. And we realized that having, Omidyar, the name carried this implication of dual checkbook. And so we were actually the first ones to spin out. We, um, we spun out in January of 2018. We branded ourselves as Spero Ventures. And we say now that we invest in the things that make life worth living: well being, work and purpose, and human connection. We're very much a single bottom line venture firm. Our thesis, though, is that we invest in mission driven founders. And we believe that mission and purpose fuels your growth and will help make you, very successful. The examples we use are eBay, Tesla, WhatsApp. They each had a mission, right? And I wrote a post a couple of weeks ago about what is, it's mission is such a misunderstood word. And the way we think about it is by doing your core function, by doing so in eBay, connecting buyers and sellers to consummate a transaction. By doing that core function, you're moving towards your mission. Your mission is getting executed. So that's how we define mission. It's not this thing to the side. It's not charity. It's not, CSR. It's not, any of those things. It's core to who you are, how you think about the world, how you build a company, how you build product, your values, how you make decisions. So it's just very core to the company. And so we invest in mission driven founders building these companies, and we aim for venture returns. So that's who we are. And because we were different enough in that regard, we spun out, we rebranded, and we made a ton of investments since then following this thesis.
Just to highlight to the listeners, so some of your investments in the three core areas are in health and wellness, which you categorize in well-being, uh, uh, core, Genclove, Rome, Tortuga, Actec, Clarity. In work and purpose, it's Jopwell, Crew, Bunker, Matai, Skillshare, and in human connections, they are Hustle, Coco, Rushtex. Have I completed all, or have I missed
Yeah,
anyone?
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's all listed on our website, but yeah, we categorize them that way. And the way we think about a company when they come in, often people say like, is it B2B? Is it B2C? When a company comes in, we think about like, what is the problem this company is solving, right? And then we say, okay, if this company gets to scale, what does the world look like? And then we say, okay, we think this is an amazing company. Let's figure out if the business model works and if it aligns with the mission. And so we invest like a VC once we pass our first filter of like, what's the mission? What's it going to be when it grows up and gets to scale?
And one of your video interviews mentioned, Shripriya, that while you were building just at the start of Spero Ventures, you were battling cancer. And how did that shape your perspective? What was that period like when you had two small boys at home building a new venture fund and uh, you know uh, going through such a transformative phase yourself?
Yeah. It was late 2000s. It was August or September of 2000, August of 2017. And I had a presentation to Pierre and the board just about like, hey, here's how we recommend we spin out. Um, here's our name, here's how we should structure it, just to get the final approvals because we'd been working on it. And 2 weeks before that, I discovered that I'd been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was in my early 40s. It was really shocking to me that it was stunning, right? And it's one of those moments that just stops you and makes you really evaluate everything in your life. Like, wow, should I be doing this? How should I rethink my life? What should I do? And the board and Pierre were just so kind and supportive. They said, listen, if you want to keep going with this, happy to do that. If you want to stop and take a break and just focus on your health, happy to do that. Please tell us how we can support you. So it's just amazing, to feel that supported and feel that, you know um, it's rare in a for-profit environment, right? They're just very good people. And I decided that, I kind of like looked at my life and I said, what really matters to me? And like the primary thing, if you haven't had an event like that, is the desperate desire to live, right? I was like, I really want to live. I want to grow old, see my kids, have kids, and I want to be there for my children. And that was the fundamental thing. I wanted to get well. I wanted to spend time with my family, and I wanted to work on something really meaningful. I was like, this is such a wake up call. I want to make sure that work consumes all of us. For me, I just I love working because I've often been lucky to find things I'm passionate about. So I was like, I will end up working 12 plus hours on any given day. So it has to be something that has meaning. And as I looked at where I was and what I was doing, I realized that those were the thesis areas for Spero Ventures, right? My health and well-being, um, work and purpose, not just work, but work and purpose and human connection. And I said, like this, I made the decision that I wanted to keep working. So I worked through chemo. We figured out all our plans to spin out while I was undergoing treatment, um, and surgery. And, we went public with it, um, about 6 weeks after my a major surgery. And so it was one of those things. Spero Ventures really was the thing that gave me hope during that very difficult time. And the interesting story there is actually Omid means hope. And so Omidyar either means the man from hope or the man of hope, which I think is an amazing, amazing name that Pierre has. Um, and I had looked up hope in every language, and Spero means hope in Latin. And the URL was available. That's how we make naming decisions these days, right? And so, Spero actually gave me a lot of hope through that time. And we say, listen, we our investors give us hope for the future that we will live in. And it was really a moment of great, like, it's when someone goes through chemo, you kind of get wrecked, and it's very easy to feel down and tired and exhausted and lose hope. And work was the kind of like a bright shining moment in my life where I could focus on something in the future, focus on something we were creating and building, and it really got me through that difficult time.
You mentioned an incident during that time that when you opened your laptop and you had face recognition in it, uh,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah, it was
couldn't
actually my
recognize you.
phone. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
actually my phone.
yeah.
Apple just made the switch from the touch-based, your fingerprint, to unlock to Face ID. And like I would be lying down with my phone, and I set up Face ID, and Face ID would you could either set it up with I could either set it up by being bald, so no cap, completely bald, no hair, and then it would open. But if I had my cap on, because I'd often be cold or I'd be going somewhere where I needed needed to wear my cap, it wouldn't recognize me. And so it was such a frustration. And I realized that, fortunately, luckily for me, it was a temporary period in my life, right? It was 6 months, 8 months, it was 8 months of my life. But there are people who deal with this every day. And it made me realize how much technology is designed for the mainstream and we ignore everyone else. And like there were just a series of things that kind of like, I have a TV in my bedroom, and the TV has this little light. It's a little green light. But when you go through chemo, my anxiety was so high that little green light was like this bright shining alarm, right? Like, and I couldn't go to sleep. And so it's all these things that you notice when you're not in the norm that really came home to me when I was dealing with chemo. I had I had no grip because you lose the your fingerprint. You lose the it kind of like just wears away because of chemo. The edges of your fingers and toes lose grip. I had no nails. So it's all these things that you take for granted as a fully functioning adult, that when you go through something like this, you realize how much people who aren't in the mainstream deal with in their everyday lives, potentially forever, that we don't design for.
Yeah, and technology is designed till now for use cases, but not, taking kindness or empathy into consideration, and
Yeah,
that's surprising.
yeah, it's really, I as we have more AI, more robotic interactions, I do think empathy, and we've seen a few companies in the space that are really on the cutting edge, um, who are thinking about how to build empathy into technology, and I think it'll be a big change in the next 20 years as we think about tech.
So you have gone, if I say that, at this moment in life, you are a venture investor, uh, but you have so much different experiences in life, Shripriya, from, let's say, the other traditional venture investors. You have been a filmmaker, you have been a high net worth corporate executive, and you have gone through these experiences which change your perspective as a person. For example, in 2017, 2018, when you were battling cancer, right? So how does this all, give you a different purpose today when you are looking at companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think having different perspectives is really important in investing. Being having different people invest is also important, right? Like women, underrepresented people. We need the investing world to look like the world, right? So that we invest in products that help the whole world, right? Not just the very exclusive part of the world. Um, I think, look, if you think about Silicon Valley, and I think India is different because of the way the technology industry in India evolved, right? There's not like this core group who's been engineers forever and then investors forever. India does have diverse investors. But if you think about Silicon Valley, there has been historically a kind of investor. The engineers, they went to Stanford, they went to Cal, they went to MIT. They come, like they start a company, then they become venture investors, and they literally have never done anything outside of the technology world. And I think they're very smart, kind, incredible people who built the venture industry here, right? I don't I think they looked at opportunities and they invested in great companies. But I think, we now live in a world where technology is just different, right? Like back in the 80s and 90s, even in the early 2000s, technology touched some people. It touched a lot of people in the US, but it touched a small percentage of the globe. And now technology has permeated through everything. And so I think we need people with broader perspective to see the potential and ideas that people without that perspective may not have. I'm not saying I will, but that's the question we ask ourselves every day, right? Like, what is the unique advantage this company has? What is the unique advantage we have to help this company? And that's how we view the world. I was very fortunate when I moved to New York. It was the first time I'd really lived outside the Silicon Valley bubble, and it was an amazing experience, right? To talk to people who were in the arts, to talk to people who were dancers and actors, and yeah, they used technology, but it was very much to fulfill their passion, right? Versus technology being all consuming like it is here in Silicon Valley. Every single person here works in tech, whether it's in accounting for tech or legal for tech or something for tech. It's all tech all the time. But being outside that bubble really gave me that perspective of, look, tech should be used to help people advance what they want to achieve in their lives. And so that's how we think about it. My venture partner in at Spero Ventures is Mark Tarpening. He was the co-founder of Tesla, and he cares deeply about sustainability. When he and Martin started Tesla, they were like, listen, oil is going to be a problem, climate change is going to be a problem. We need to move towards electric cars. And the way they thought about the world was, we don't want to make we don't want you to buy this car because it's electric. We want you to buy this car because it's the best car in the market. It happens to be an electric car. So by fulfilling their core function of selling electric cars, they were moving the world towards a non-gas future, right? And so Mark has joined us, and we think Mark has a very different perspective on the world as well. He looks at the world, he thinks about what he wants to live in, what he wants his children to live in, and he invests in those things that'll make their life great. Instead of saying, "Oh, this ad-based business, you're walking down the street and ads are flying at you." He's like, "I don't want to live like that. We're not going to invest in that, even though that may come to pass and people may invest in that. That's not what we want to invest in." So we try to use our time where we've thought differently and bring that into our investing decisions.
And how have you seen them over the last 3 years scale? And because one of the aims of a venture is to generate returns.
Sure.
So how does that purpose marry with the
It's
returns?
completely tied. So the way we think about it is we measure ourselves based on return. We're a single bottom line venture fund. The only measure we measure ourselves on is our return to our LP, and but our filter is mission. So we invest in companies that have a powerful mission that we think will be amazing returns. So if you think about Tesla, right? And this is the key thing. Like, we don't think of it as, is it doing good or is it making money? We think they are intrinsically go hand in hand. So if you think about Tesla, what is the core purpose of Tesla? It's to build and sell electric cars to people. Every car they sell brings them money and moves them towards their mission. So we don't invest in things where the mission and the business model are different. The mission and the business model have to be perfectly aligned. And then we think you can have a pretty great company.
So I was saying that as you are progressing in third year into your journey
Yeah.
of funding mission based ventures,
Yeah.
which are making the world a better place. So are you seeing more of these companies uh, as every year in
Yes.
your
Yeah, very much so. As you think about millennials and Gen Z, um, they care deeply about the world in which they live, the where they spend their time, how they spend their money, and they're inheriting. Gen Z is inheriting a very tough situation with climate change. So they are the generation that is going to have to fix this problem. So Gen Z is laser focused on how can they save the planet, right? And how can they work on things that matter. And it's absolutely inspiring and heartwarming to see this generation start to come of age. The oldest are just starting to come of age, and to see what they care about. And we've been doing this. I've been doing this for 5 years now, mission driven investing, and I'm really starting to see more and more investors who care deeply about mission and who want investors who care about mission. Entrepreneurs are really smart. They know when VCs truly care about mission. They've been investing in mission all along, and people who just say, "Hey, mission matters," just because it's the new cool thing to say. And so we feel like we are in a great position to support the next generation of entrepreneurs who will make our world better, safer, more livable, more accessible, more provide more opportunities to more people. So we definitely think the world has made a dramatic shift towards that worldview.
and Shripriya, our world has never faced, at least our generation has never faced such a time, that in the same year we have a global pandemic which it has consumed a million of lives, and currently has around 50 million people affected uh, by the COVID. And at the similar time, California believed that, hey, climate change is a third world problem, but, you had fires in California where it almost became unlivable. uh,
Yeah, it was
and
unlivable. Yeah.
and you have at the same time, many unrest, Black Lives Matter. So so has perspective of founder changed, that those who were earlier building venture for the sake of being an entrepreneur or having their destiny in their own hands, now they think, my if somebody is not fixing the world, it's better be me who
Yeah.
should fix it.
I do think entrepreneurs look. I think what this year has shown us, it's a huge wake up call, right? And and while we want to be individualistic and feel we can have, I think the way to be individualistic is to say I can have a massive positive impact. But I am also connected with every other person on this planet. If I don't bring people along with me and give access and possibility to all people, then none of us progress, right? Like that's what we're seeing. Like if we say, hey, we don't care about climate because it doesn't affect me individually, that's just not the way it works because the world is connected. We live on this one blue dot, right? And we can't be that individualistic that we're not willing to make it better for everyone, because if we don't make it better for everyone, then there's unrest, right, that is eventually going to affect you. So I think the where individualism has to shine is where you say, hey, I as a person have this brilliant idea and I'm going to make the world better. Where it cannot shine, or where you should realize we're all connected, is opportunity has to be equally distributed. Right now, opportunity is not equally distributed. And when we make opportunity more equally distributed, where anyone, anywhere in the world can improve their lives and live, I mean, like all human beings want the same thing, they want peace and they want to be able to have families in peace and live the lives where they can follow their passion, right? And I think what we've realized is we need to make opportunity accessible for all. And in the US, it's particularly stark. I think it's not so stark for some countries, but climate change is really hitting the US. I mean, we had AQIs of over 300 in California. And even yesterday in the North Bay, people I know were evacuated because the fires were too close. Now the fires are, if not at their homes, in their neighborhood. And so it's a really scary time for people in technology, who lived in this bubble, to say, hey, wow, climate change is real, it's here. How do I deal with this and what do I do? And I think there was a TechCrunch article a couple of days ago where there has been more investment in climate change this year than maybe any other industry. Um, because people are like, it's a bit late, but better late than never. And so I think there's a huge focus, and there are firms who have been focused on this for 3 or 4 years. They're not the most well-known firms. There's a VC firm called AmAsia, where one of the partners actually has been writing about this for over 18 months, and has been investing in this for over 3 years. They're really at the forefront of thinking about climate change and how it affects everything we do.
Thank you, Shripriya. Your perspectives, experiences have really been unique, and the way you look at entrepreneurship, venture capital, I really believe that spurs a change in future entrepreneurs who want to to build a good world, as at the same time impact a massive change, and at the same time, those who are ambitious want to have a massive amount of wealth also. Thank you so much for being on the 100x Entrepreneur podcast. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. It was such a pleasure to be here, and I'm wishing you all the very best as you race towards your 100th episode.
Thank you so much.